live. Yay. So welcome everyone. Good afternoon. We are so excited to be broadcasting live for Giving Tuesday and highlighting impactful stories of leadership throughout the day. My name is Maggie Benedetti and I'm the founder and executive director of Wild Hearts Idaho. And joining me here on Zoom is an amazing young woman who's had an incredible impact within Wild Hearts. Madeline Patterson has been on our youth board for the last 2 years, has served on our board of directors, has ran our social media, and was also awarded the Idaho Youth Philanthropist of the Year this year. So we have the honor and privilege of her joining us today. Welcome, Madeline.
Oh, thank you, Maggie. Thank you so much for having me here today.
For sure. Super excited. So Madeline and I will be just chatting about her impacts within Wild Hearts, as well as just her views on philanthropy and how that has shaped her and her future. So are you ready to jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So can you share with us a little bit more? I know I broadly shared the ways that you've been involved in Wild Hearts, but in what ways have you been involved with Wild Hearts over the past 2 to 3 years? What has stuck out to you the most?
Yeah, so as you said, I spent 2 years on the youth leadership board, my junior and senior years of high school. And then I spent about a year and a half of that time on the board of directors as well. And there were 2 of us, and that was with the, I think there were about 5 adults, and that was really fun. Of course, you were there, and getting to get more behind the scenes of what a nonprofit does, because of course, I had never really had that experience before. So that was really unique to hear just how that worked and like kind of the dialogue that goes on between like for making decisions. And then I, for about a year, did the social media of kind of like creating posts and figuring out how we wanted to represent the adventures that the girls had just gone on, sharing quotes and pictures. And that was really fun. I always loved seeing the adventure posts, and that's something that a lot of Wild Hearts, I'll say people have said that's one of their favorite parts too. So I always liked doing that. And then, of course, I went on the adventures, which was really fun, of getting to go snowshoeing, rafting, rock climbing, backpacking, hiking. For the most part, I got to go on really everything that Wild Hearts offers, which is really great. And then now I am a freshman at Boise State University in the Honors College, and I am figuring out how to both do this like new part of my life and keep Wild Hearts and like how to fit them in nicely together, which has been fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, like you mentioned, like you have had just taken on leadership within Wild Hearts on all levels, starting with adventures and the youth board and ultimately serving on a board of directors and hopefully coming back and volunteering with us. I know we chat about ways to implement that even this year, but it's been incredible to see that progression and just the relationships that we've developed and that you've developed with other people within Wild Hearts. I know that a lot of people, even our youth board now, continues to talk about Madeline and like just what an amazing role model and person you are. So overall, just wanted to say thank you for continuing to step up in leadership within our organization and to say yes to adventure and to be vulnerable and just share your full self with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. How would you describe Wild Hearts in 3 words?
Okay, so this of course takes a lot of effort, and I also thought Wild Hearts Idaho is 3 words, and that's probably good. I came up with opportunity, friendship, and fun, because I feel like that's something I always encountered in every time I was with Wild Hearts.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. And I know specifically for you, wasn't the backpacking trip was that your first backpacking trip in the Sawtooth?
Yeah, that was my very first backpacking trip, and also my first time being in Sun Valley and that area of just being so close to mountains, because we're by mountains here in Boise, but it's just not the same as like when you gain that elevation and being in the Sawtooth. So that was really amazing to see and like be in.
For sure. When it's, not too far away, it's 2.5 hours, yeah. But it's totally different. It's an amazing place to be for sure. Why do you think Wild Hearts is critical for girls in our community?
Like you just said, of like Sun Valley is just about 2.5 hours away, and then it's either like girls might not have the opportunity to go there, or it just like never comes up really. Like my dad has been camping up there before, but I was too young to go. And then once I was getting older, I was just getting kind of busy, and like we didn't really think of like, oh, let's go to Sun Valley, let's see how beautiful it is. So it was really great that I got to go with like girls my age who had both been there and had not been there. And so it's just a really critical thing for girls to be able to experience the nature that we have so close to us, and that often we kind of forget about just because it is so close. So getting to experience that with other girls is especially important.
For sure, definitely. And to add on to that, like with one of the words that you talked about was friendship. Like I feel, can you touch on that a little bit of how within your experiences of Wild Hearts, like maybe friendships you've made or relationships that have been built through your outdoor adventures or the youth board?
Yeah, so I've certainly made friends on the board. Like you had Ava on earlier, that she's one of the co-presidents of Wild Hearts. That we became friends last year when we were on the board together, and then I met Emily, who is in the YLB now. That we were actually, I think she had gone on an adventure before I had with Wild Hearts, but she was there for my first adventure ever with you guys, of going rafting. So that was fun, and like getting to see familiar faces again. And especially I have a friend, Kimberly, that like we have each other on Instagram now. So like I get to see what she's up to, and we get to talk on there. And we also have that like initial experience of getting to know each other from Wild Hearts, because that's a space where like it's encouraged that we don't look at our phones, which isn't something we have a lot, because it's usually like, oh, there's a moment to spare, I should like probably see what's on my phone for a second, because I am certainly guilty of that. I wish I could say I wasn't, but I think we all are to some degree. But that's a really amazing way to get to know other people, that you're not trying to like look for a distraction really of like consciously or unconsciously, and getting to just like be amongst nature at the same time. Of it puts you in a different like headspace, and it makes it that much more fun to get to know other people and like think about everything.
For sure. Yeah, I like what you talked about in terms of like new headspace, and just I feel like the outdoors in general offers that, and that can look really different for a lot of people. But as you mentioned too, like having a cell phone free environment when we're all in nature, outdoors, enjoying it together, and really like working as a team, and even potentially, people of different levels of comfortability in the outdoors or experience in the outdoors too can all come together in one and have this similar experience. So yeah, pretty cool. So you were just awarded the Idaho Youth Philanthropist of the Year Award by the Idaho Nonprofit Center. I want to say congratulations. Super remarkable, and definitely an honor. So can you share with us what this award means to you? And overall, maybe what, just philanthropy in general, what does that mean to you?
So, well, I mean, you already said it. It was such an honor, and that was such a surprise to hear that you had nominated me, and that I was even just being awarded with that. That was amazing. And oh my goodness. But I have been volunteering, because I always like to use the word volunteering, because to me philanthropy, like that was the first time I've thought about it as like not someone living in a palace going to like a ball. Right. To, but
that's
like
a good word for sure. Lots fancy meanings to it.
Yeah. And so like having philanthropy in my life and volunteering, I've been doing it at least since the 9th grade, because for like some school requirements it was kind of needed, and just like getting to try out the different things. And so since then I've gotten to like work with different projects. Like One Stone has some amazing projects, and then of course Wild Hearts Idaho. And then that's been just so fun of getting to kind of dive into different passions that I've got and getting to like practice different skills that I got to practice writing for Wild Hearts, because that was another part I loved about doing the social media, is like doing the posts of having the captions written for it. And so there's just so much that you get to do with philanthropy. And then it was just so nice to like be honored for that, because that was just something I never expected.
That's awesome. Do you think, in terms of volunteering, like, was that something that was instilled in you as a young girl through your family, or is it something that you're like, I want to try this on my own? Kind of, do you remember a time when you maybe made that decision to like, hey, I'm going to volunteer or step outside my comfort zone and do this thing in my community?
I feel like both, because I did Girl Scouts when I was in elementary school and then up into 12th grade. And I feel like in elementary school, we did some volunteering activities, but not as many as like the troop I was involved with in my later years. And so there was definitely like kind of a group element of like that I had friends to go with and that there was something already kind of designated for us. And then as I got older, I started kind of seeking out new opportunities that now I am trying to go after the Congressional Award, which you are my mentor for. And so that's got different elements to it. Volunteering is one of them. And so I've been figuring out how to do that now, especially. And it can be as easy or as difficult as you want it to be. Like I'm going to be making some cards for people in retirement homes or the veterans home. It's really just something that'll like brighten their day, as well as like volunteering with Wild Hearts. That those are two different kind of ways to volunteer, and like two things that I like doing. Like I like creating, and that's something I get to do in different capacities.
For sure. That's a really cool perspective, because you're talking about like you definitely are very creative and you've brought a lot of creative energy into Wild Hearts in multiple ways. But even just to like touch on what you've talked about in terms of volunteering, like there's so many different ways to get involved and to use your creativity and ideas to help organizations. Like you've mentioned One Stone and the Girl Scouts and Wild Hearts, and even sprinkling a little bit onto like retirement homes and veterans, and I think that will go a long way, especially during like these current times, and spreading love and cheer, it's always good. Awesome. So that's exciting to hear too, that volunteering and philanthropy will, like, you're taking it to that next step, and continuing to pursue this even as a college student. That's awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
Thank you.
So how has this philanthropy been a key aspect of who you are, or in a way like helped to define your, like, what you want to achieve in life?
Yeah, kind of like I mentioned, it's definitely helped me discover passions of things that I wouldn't have really thought of before, especially for Wild Hearts, of like getting girls outside and exploring leadership. That's something I wouldn't have thought of on my own. Like I would have thought of them as like different elements. I wouldn't have thought of them as like three parts to a whole. And so I really love getting to like discover that and use that. And that has been such kind of a jumping off point for like a lot of other things I've done. I wrote a lot about Wild Hearts when I was doing scholarship applications and college applications, of that it had just meant so much to me, and I had so much like self-reflection and just kind of like thinking involved with it. So that's really something that has helped, as like being a key.
For sure. Yeah, the self-reflection piece is always big. And that's a big piece of leadership, being able to lead ourselves in order to lead others. For sure. What advice would you give young teens about getting involved in their community and giving back?
So kind of like I said earlier, if there's different ways to give back, that it's just really great to try. And especially if you have friends who are interested in like doing it with you, that is a really like great space to be in, of doing good for yourself and for other people. And there's just such like a large scale of what you can do, that you can do cards like I mentioned, you can join an organization of like keeping up with Wild Hearts, and then just like sharing music, sharing writing, sharing just your own life and what you've learned and like what experiences have shaped you. And there's just so many things to dive into and try out as new or old. And that's just something that everyone definitely needs to try.
Definitely. Yeah. And like you said, it's, whether trying something new or already using skills you have to benefit the community, even if it's for an hour or a month or a year, there's lots of different unique ways to get involved, and maybe even an organization that you're interested in or curious about learning more might be interested in like creating something with you, or like I feel like in terms of, people of all ages, but especially young people have amazing ideas and often don't necessarily have opportunities to share those ideas. And so that's one aspect of Wild Hearts that I'm really proud about, is like we shout those at the top of the mountain, and like we want all the ideas possible and getting more voices, especially women and girls' voices at the table. But just in terms of here locally and just within nonprofit world, getting more youth involved is really critical and important to that too. So
Yeah.
I'm happy that you have taken the steps to do that, for sure.
Yeah, and then I wanted to add to that I feel like youth don't always feel like they have an outlet to like have their creativity like put into, or like a network of like people that could help make something happen that's just like something that's an idea in their head. And so Wild Hearts is certainly a space for that, and there are so many other amazing organizations that are too. And that's why it's important to like listen to each other and see what is out there, because there's so many spectacular ideas.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. So what has been one of your biggest challenges in identifying how you lead, or your leadership vision?
I have always been fearful of like being bossy, and I really like sharing, as I'm sure like you and our viewers can tell right now, like we're just talking and getting to like have that dialogue. And I sometimes have a hard time between feeling like I'm sharing too much to the point that it's just kind of overbearing, or whether it's like is sharing, because there is a point where like it doesn't become sharing anymore. But for the most part, I believe I know that line. It's just that I'm fearful that I'm approaching it much sooner than I am. And so I try to get out of my own head and listen to like people I trust, like you, of like because we're just it's so easy to be critical of ourselves. And so it's good to have people we trust who will like tell us if we're doing something wrong, or just like cheer us on and encourage us when we're doing something right. And that helps us like shape that in our own heads if we're like kind of mixing the two up.
For sure. Yeah, it's always important to have like people in your corner, and people you trust to get you through the lows and through the highs, and who know you and like what you want to achieve and be your biggest advocates, for sure. But I can resonate with that also in terms of like being in my own head or over critical, overthinking things. And maybe that's, I don't know, part of society's pressures on young women and professionals. But I think that's something even within Wild Hearts myself, this whole mission of building leadership in girls has also created this spinoff of like generational mentorship, and the women within our organization I've heard multiple times are like learning much more about themselves and themselves as leaders, themselves as women, and just identifying things that they might not know were there. So not only are like you and girls who participated in Wild Hearts gaining skills and leadership that they're taking on into different ways in their life, but also the women who volunteer with us are continuing to learn as well. So like you said, like it's important to have, those people who are advocating for you and know us and trust us. Like that's true across the age spectrum, and just like women supporting women and how critical that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so in what ways can women of all ages support rising leaders like yourself in our community?
Yeah, so here, I need to refresh. I wrote down several different words for this one.
Love
So
it.
kind of like what we talked about of just like talking to people and asking questions, because I feel like asking questions is sometimes undervalued of asking hard questions or easy questions, because either way they make you think.
Mhm.
And if it's already pre-programmed, it's important to think about of like, is this a good reason that I'm already got this in my head? Like to me, I have Wild Heart's mission like pre-programmed in my head if somebody asks about it. And I think that's a good thing, because that's what it's about. And it's not, I shouldn't say it's not. It's just an amazing thing that I want people to know about. And with that of for supporting rising leaders, of looking into what they're talking about. So when I talk about Wild Hearts Idaho, I hope that someone thinks about it and looks it up, finds out what we're doing, and then hopefully follows us as well. Because similar with like small businesses or artists, it's important to, even if you can't like give financially, to give your support in another way of like talking with your friends, like, oh, I heard about this amazing organization. Did you see what they're doing this month? Or just kind of wanting to like open up about what you like about something, because it's so easy to say what we don't like about things. That is just something of so I'm gonna read my thing of talk to, ask questions, follow, research, and find more people and repeat, of just that that's kind of a process that you want to keep going through. And that way we all learn more. And then that's something that, while like I'm learning from you, you learn from me. Like we get to learn what questions people have, of like, oh, what could I be more clear on, or what are people more interested in? And so it goes both ways of doing that.
That was a great kind of visual you painted in terms of like it is a cycle, and no matter what your age is or how you identify, like we can support one another and make our community a better place for all. Yeah, that was really powerful and like a really cool way to think about how maybe the older generations can support the rising leaders that are coming up, who will be leaders in our community moving forward and who are already making big changes in our community now. And so how can we continue to support them and amplify their voices within bigger decision making within our community, for sure.
Yeah, and then at the same time, continuing to support or give support to a new person who may not be like my age, that they just turned like 19, but are going for positive change, and they have so much experience that it's definitely important to keep those people in as well.
Totally. Yeah. And engaging like diverse voices and perspectives. And I love what you mentioned about like listening. Like that is a key piece, and active listening in terms of like, yes, being mindful and taking it in rather than like putting it all out there. Yeah, that's a really big piece of it too. Cool. So let's see. What are some of your biggest takeaways about leadership from your experiences in Wild Hearts?
With Wild Hearts, I learned a lot about the different ways leadership can look, because I feel like I always viewed it as like, oh, my teachers are the leaders here, or there's the team captain, and that there are big and small actions, and there's just so many different models that leadership can take. That one example is when we had our snowshoe trip that was overnight, which I think it was 2 years ago now, that there was a person who was very angry at the mentor who was driving my car. And that is just so easy to like be angry back or like over explain yourself, but she just listened and she was kind back. And that is something that I've remembered since then, that I like, out of all the reactions of like, if it was like a quiz or something, like which reaction do you think this person will take, of like choose your own adventure, being kind back is certainly not what I would have thought, but I thought that was such an amazing moment for the three of us who were in the car with her, of getting to see that, just because that's not something we always see, of like being kind and like to someone who's not being kind to us, like directly, not even like it happens and then you're kind after, you're kind in the moment, because that's hard to like do. It really is. And so that was a moment of leadership that I've thought about since then. And it's just something that you can't duplicate all the time, that like being because imagining a teacher, you can kind of duplicate that in your head, because we see so many teachers and they're all different in their own respects, but we like can kind of come up with a generalized version of what that leadership looks like. But it's important to remember the big and small actions or inactions that are in leadership. And additionally, just like, it really is an adventure. There's just so much to it and it's always changing. And that's what's fun about it, even when it's hard.
For sure. It's almost like every experience and, different relationships or roles we might have shapes our journey and our opportunities, and helps us better define like who we are and what we want to do, and just our own way of leading too. Like that experience you had in the car with the mentors being kind has now helped you to some extent realize like, oh, that's an appropriate reaction for when someone is not nice to me, or so even maybe changing the perspective or the narrative around leadership too, of, I know we talk about, like be the bigger person, but like, what does that look like in action? So that's a really great example. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Are there ways that just within your own life that you think you lead differently, or maybe like within peer groups or with school, in high school, are there examples you can think of maybe how you changed your leadership style?
Definitely. Like, I've got one group project right now, and it seems like one of the girls kind of decided she doesn't like me, which, like, I don't know, whatever. But she wasn't being very polite to me, and it was hard because, like, at the same time, I was trying to, like, share and, like, kind of get my point across in a way, because they weren't quite grasping the way I was thinking of it, because we were thinking of the same thing in kind of two different angles. Mm-hmm. And so then I just kind of backed off, because I thought, like, this isn't helping for me to, like, they all agree on this, I'll just have to agree with them. It's not important for me to have my specific vision or for them to see this vision right now. And then
which can be hard to realize that, and that, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of like that self-reflection piece of like, oh, okay, this is what's happening, this is my role in it, and how do I respond?
Yeah, that's one of those things that we do want to be liked, so it's hard to like see that we're not necessarily, or in that, like, especially we like to have a reason of like, oh, this is what happened, I feel justified in this, so it's fine. That I'm kind of rethinking that, and that's something that I try to do in a lot of aspects, because I do think about those things to an extent that isn't always beneficial to me, and just being able to move past it and like think, like reflect on it, but then I'm like, okay, that's not what will help me in the future, so I'll come to that when it comes. Right. But yeah, and then there's just so many different dynamics, especially in like peer groups, of like how you want to lead it and how you want to look at something, because everyone has different learning styles. And then things like in my high school marching band, I was a section leader there, and so I felt like I had like almost an authority to be a leader, especially like I knew what I was doing, and I knew who to talk to if I didn't know. And like being in a freshman in the Blue Thunder marching band, it feels different, especially for this year. And we were kind of like sectioned off from each other for a while. And So that way I feel like my leadership is just showing up and being on time and knowing what I'm supposed to do or asking questions versus like sharing with others. Besides like when I do know, like, oh, did they say rehearsals this week? Yes, they did. That's a sort of thing. Like, I feel comfortable with that. That it's just always so different in different groups and being able to kind of like shape with it.
Completely. And that's a big aspect of leadership, right? Being adaptable and being able to like you mentioned, like be in the present moment and taking experiences that we've had into new roles. So even if, like you mentioned, like in high school, you were the section leader and now you've progressed and are like taking on new roles within marching band at Boise State, and yet like you're still showing up as a leader even though you might not have a title yet, which is, I think, like personal responsibility is a key aspect of leadership too. And so, engaging with that every day in our actions is critical for sure.
Yeah. And I'd like you to answer the same question. How do you think your leadership changes in different areas?
Yeah, I mean, just as the founder and executive director of Wild Hearts, I feel like that's a big title, a big role. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. So I try and lead as like personally as possible. I think like people understand our mission and what we do and the impact we create. And so really for me, it's helping people engage in that impact and knowing that every action, big or small, is making a difference within our organization and like the lives of teen girls. So I think I need to like think about that more. But I would say overall, I try and as a leader, build relationships with people and know that it is 100% like a two-way street. I have tried really hard within Wild Hearts to make it an organization that the leadership is from the bottom to top. So like the girls in our programs, such like for instance, the youth board, they have as equal and as powerful as a voice as our board members and the people who oversee our organization in that respect. So I think, and just for my leadership philosophy, I think that's a key aspect of it, that voices are represented and that like diverse voices are at the table. And that kind of what you mentioned too, like I don't have all the answers, nor do I want to have all the answers. And so leaning on people who can support me and move our mission and vision forward, and who are willing to take on some of this too. So it's completely a team effort, although I might be the founder and executive director. Like there are so many people working hard at this too, and so it's just continuing to lead that team.
Yeah, especially you said how you want to have the youth leadership board and board of directors to have fairly equal voices, and those are definitely two different groups. Like the board of directors are all adults. They know about nonprofits. They know about the outdoors. They just know a certain extent that like as teenagers, we don't like aren't expected to know. I'm sure some people do, but I know I did not.
Yeah. Experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the YLB of trying to, well, not trying, that like exploring different aspects of leadership and getting to know girls and like having community members come in, those are two different kind of aspects of it. And then to have them be the same, that definitely does take different forms of leadership and like approaches. Mm-hmm. So I definitely commend you for that. It's very cool.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, and overall, it's, we are all people and we're all have a role to play. And I think the more we can like use our talents and step outside our comfort zone, the more we all learn and grow and engage. And I feel like just full circle, that's what Wild Hearts for me has done. I mean, public speaking still makes me nervous, but there's and there's other aspects of Wild Hearts that I'm like, oh man, I'm really stepping out on a limb, but it's still just full on growth for me as a professional and as a nonprofit leader. And then that full cycle is like me doing this step, even just like a YouTube live on Giving Tuesday, is then, spreading this conversation, but also showing girls and showing people of all ages that like, yeah, you can try this and you don't have to be YouTube famous, or tech savvy. So just every little ounce that we like continue to step outside our comfort zones not only builds our own courage and confidence, but then sparks that in someone else. So that's what I hope in general that my leadership can do through Wild Hearts.
Yeah, and then like you just mentioned, kind of similarly of like not every like endeavor we have needs to be like a smashing success if everyone's talking about it. It's the big thing that it's just like worth trying and learning from. And it's even okay to like not finish something that, because I know I always put pressure on myself of like, I've committed to this, my commitment goes to the very end. And like I don't want to back down. And sometimes it is okay to like realize and accept of, I guess this isn't quite working how I thought it would. I can like dial back, or I can try something new, or maybe this isn't worth my time right now and I should invest in something else.
Right.
Of having that like dialogue even when it's hard, and getting to think about that sort of stuff.
Completely, which is something I think just throughout our lives is something we consistently have to revisit, and as things in our life might change, or things we bring on, things we let go, that's a really great thing, like just in general, great perspective to share, Madeline, to, yeah, as a leader and just as a human being, we have to consistently check in with ourselves and see like, hey, where are we at, and what is meaningful right now, and how can we best use our time and energy. Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's see. Okay, so from the takeaways that you've had within Wild Hearts, I mean, we've kind of talked about this already, about like how you implement this within your daily life, like things you're doing now as a leader, even if it's, showing up for class, showing up for marching band, showing up for Wild Hearts. But into your future, like, what do you think the leadership skills you have now, and where do you hope those take you? And maybe what skills do you want to learn into a potential career or community member, kind of any way? Like, where do you think as a leader you want to go?
Yeah, I'd really love to be a high school government teacher. So several of the skills that I've learned with Wild Hearts and practiced here will help me there, of like kind of public speaking, which I like. This isn't a form public speaking. Like I don't see anyone. I'd almost rather see people, honestly. I don't like just talking to a computer.
It's kind of fun, right?
But like having that and being able to hear new things, and especially I don't have to deal with it yet, of course, because I've still got several years of schooling ahead of me, but of figuring out new and engaging perspectives to like share in a classroom that I feel like aren't necessarily shared as often as they should. And just being able to have different like avenues to go through that, and like encourage that in students, which would be great. I'm not sure how that would look. I look forward to finding out. But
For sure.
yeah, and then I know I want to do some other things too. I just don't know what yet. So we'll find out. But oh, like I definitely look forward to doing more with Wild Hearts, of especially I want to do more with social media. I've been gone for a while now. I want to help with that a little bit again. We'll figure that out.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, it's exciting to hear that, as you look forward to your future and career path as a high school government teacher, that like where like your experiences in high school and who you have been and who continue to be will, I'm sure, shape your like teaching philosophy, and like you said, like engaging diverse voices and voices that might not be heard in creative ways. So that's really exciting, and exciting for, future students who will be in your classroom to have a teacher that understands that and wants to like bring that to the forefront.
Yeah, thank you.
And I mean, at 19, believe me, girl, there you don't have to have all the answers. So there's a long, yeah, lots of journey ahead and roads to be taken and whys, So yeah, but very proud and excited for you. So, as you know, every adventure we wrap up with our Wild Heart moment, which is something where we all stand in a circle and mention something that we saw in ourselves and something that we saw in someone else during that adventure. Just a way to, bring encouragement and excitement, but also just kind of wrap up the trip. So, throughout your experiences in Wild Hearts, what has been your biggest Wild Heart moment?
So I don't want to call it my biggest because that puts so much pressure on it. But one that I've been thinking of, it's like the only one that comes to my mind right now is the Youth Leadership Board usually has a retreat before. So the 2 years that I was in the YLB, we got to have an overnight, and that was at Friendship Square, which is by Military Reserve. And so my first year, it was I had to come late because I had a marching band competition that day, which was in Pocatello. So it was just a whole day's trip on its own. And then I'd been so looking forward to Wild Hearts. And by the time I was about ready to go, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so exhausted of like, I want to go, but I also don't want to go because I'm so exhausted. But of course I went. And then just getting there, it was so fun. Like all of my like anxieties had gone away, of like my exhaustion from the day. It was of course still a little bit there because it was a long day, but it was so fun. It was getting to know the other girls because I'd also been worried that since I had missed out on most of the day that I'd be kind of left behind in some way. But every girl there was just so kind. And then of course it wasn't like that I had missed anything. It was that I'd finally gotten to join and like got to be with what everything else was going on. So that was that's something that kind of stuck with me, of just being really nice. And then of course we all went to bed later and it was wonderful. Great sleep.
Almost an all-nighter? No. Yeah, the youth board retreat is always a really special time where to get the youth board together and build those relationships and set some overarching themes for the year and build the team. Just camaraderie and teamwork is really special.
Yeah, and then something, since you mentioned it, of coming up with like the overarching themes of kind of like talking about expectations, like that's something I really love that we've done with Wild Hearts, that I feel like we should do more often, in just like everyday everything, of like setting the expectations and everyone agrees, and like getting to talk about what different words mean what, because we all grew up with like our elementary, junior high, and like high school having like words like responsibility, respect, honesty, and those are all important, but sometimes we forget about how important they are and like what they really mean because it's just in the background, it's like on the wall. We don't really think about it in our everyday lives. So it's so cool to be like with the people that you will be like exemplifying these values with, and to have that like as the beginning of the year.
For sure. And yeah, creating that community and that environment that we want to like flourish throughout our time together.
Exactly, yeah.
Totally. Well, Madeline, thank you so much for sharing your Wild Heart story with us, and excited to keep you involved and talk more about social media. And we chatted too about you coming and talking to our youth board about college. And yeah, I just, throughout your experiences in Wild Hearts and all you've already offered our organization, wanted to say thank you so much. And we are incredibly proud of you and grateful for everything you've done.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me this afternoon. Oh my goodness.
For sure. Well, with that, for everyone tuning in, as today is Giving Tuesday, Our goal is to raise $5,000 to support our outdoor adventure and youth leadership programming. So I definitely encourage you all to visit our website, wildheartsidaho.org, and click on the Giving Tuesday link to help support our organization today and help us reach our goal. And we're definitely very grateful for all of your support. We have one more virtual adventure coming up tonight at 6:30. We'll be doing an all levels yoga class with Yoga for Good. So that will be on Zoom, and definitely, we're streaming it too through YouTube, but you can definitely join through Zoom. And all the attendees on Zoom will be entered into win some awesome raffle prizes. So if you've never done yoga before, or if yoga is your jam, you are more than welcome to join. And hopefully we will see you there. So thank you for joining us for this amazing conversation with Madeline Patterson. And thank you all for your support. Take care.